Hi guys, it's Mrs. Alberts here and welcome back to my channel. Okay, poem number 6, Die HEKS van HEXRIVIER. So let's first look at a bit of background about this story. So the story is based on a true story about a lady called Elisa Meyring. And Elisa is this witch that they are talking about here. Now, the word hex, H-E-X, just like in English, which means to hex somebody, to put a spell on somebody, to enchant somebody. When you say hex in Afrikaans, it refers to what sounds like the H-E-K-S, which means witch. And this legend is based on a true story from 1768. It was the very early days of the Valley settlement by the French Huguenots. Now, the French Huguenots were people from France who were persecuted for being Catholic. They were Protestants, and because they were not really getting jobs and they were ostracized in France, they decided to immigrate to South Africa, and then they settled here. Thanks to the French Huguenots, we have wine. They are the guys who started planting in the Western Cape and having our beautiful winelands. So it's about this beautiful young lady called Elisa Meyring, who lived with her family in the newly built manor house on Buffelskraal Farm, northeast of De Dorens, both places still in existence today. Her nickname was La Belle Enchantresse, which is the French word for the beautiful witch. Here we just have basically the Western Cape, and you can see the HEXRIVIER Valley there in the smack bam in the middle of Upper West Coast and Great Karoo. When we look at the area HEXRIVIER Valley, HEXRIVIER Valley. The valley is at the foot of the Matroosberg, which is a peak with a peak of about 2,249 meters. Matroosberg is the second highest peak in the Western Cape. The valley was originally called the X River, or just the X River, and is the first reference to this name for the valley in 1715. This predates the story of Elisa. So one explanation is that the confluence of the three rivers in the area formed an X shape. So if you can really imagine and look inside the circle that I've drawn for you, you can kind of sort of see an X if you really try. So here's the ghost story. So the young men in the area were all taken with Elisa's beauty and elegance, and so to deter the unwanted attention, Elisa challenged her would-be suitors to climb to the heights of Matroosberg Peak, saying that she would marry the one who brought her the rare indigenous Disa uniflora orchid from its treacherous heights. Now, something about this orchid and why this is something to deter the unwanted attention is the fact that this orchid literally grows only on cliff sides. It is a natural indigenous flower to the Western Cape. It's beautiful. This little red flower at the top is just for decoration. Later on in the poem you'll see it. You'll recognize it from the rugby jerseys of the Western Cape players, the Stormers players. And like I said, it only grows where it's really dangerous to get to. And in the 1700s, you would have a lot of suitors trying to marry you because you were beautiful, you were a young lady, and that was basically all. I don't want to say that you were good for, but you know, she had a lot of people wanting to marry her. Unbeknownst to her, however, her favorite suitor decided to take up the challenge to surprise her, but he slipped and he fell to his death. So the story goes, and I have to interrupt myself here, is that he was so taken with her that the night she told him about this quest, he immediately jumped to the challenge and climbed the cliffs at night. And as he reached the flower, the rocks basically gave in beneath him and he fell. You'll see in the poem as well, they refer to having found his body while holding the Disa. So he actually got the flower for her, but unfortunately he died. On hearing this tragic news, Elisa was racked with guilt and grief. Guilty because she was the one that gave this request. She was the one that pushed him to climb this cliff. So that's how she felt. Her mourning was so intense that she lost her mind and had to be confined to her home as all she wanted to do was head into the mountains to look for him. One day she escaped from an upper floor window and went to the cliffs barefoot. Now, if this is an old Afrikaans camp story, you would have some extra information about how her parents followed her bloody footsteps up to the mountain, because being barefoot, her feet got cut. So she stood on the cliff and she leapt to her death to join her beloved. There's also the story where she calls down to him, and then you can hear how he called back, or she heard how he called back, and then she jumped. Another version states that she tried to climb out of the window of her confinement of her home, and then she fell to her death, which isn't as romantic though. Then it continues, from the sad story the legend grew, and it is said that at full moon Elisa's spirit can be found wandering the mountain slopes of the Matruisberg, searching for her lost love. So this is a ghost story about a girl who didn't marry the person she loved, and therefore she cannot find rest, and so she haunts the Matruisberg mountain slopes in search for her love. During the period of her confinement, she engraved her initials EM and the date 1768 in the glass window pane of the room with a diamond ring. Apparently, that window pane is still in existence. Okay, let's read. Toe die HEXRIVIER se heide teen die berghange blom, het 'n hiergenote meisie van Drakensberg gekom. Die lig in haar oë, die jonkmans betower, maar net een kon dit reg kry om haar hart te verower. When the HEXRIVIER's heather flowered on the mountainside, a Huguenot girl came from Drakensberg. The light in her eyes bewitched the young men, but only one could manage to steal her heart. When we look at our title, this is a lyrical ballad, a ballad that tells you a tragic story. And because it's a story, the title literally tells you what the story is about. So nothing fancy about this title. It is literally about the witch of the HEKS River Valley. And when we look at line 1, there's a word called heide. Heide refers to flowers. The flowers specifically, the Disa uniflora, which is an orchid, and it grows wild in the area. There you go. Now everybody sees this flower and you go, oh wait, that is on the rugby team, the Western Capes, the Stormers chest. That's the little symbol. Yes, it is. You are correct. Because this flower only grows in the Western Cape, nice and wildly between the cliffs, talking about cliffs. Line 1's word berghange refers to cliffs because that is where these little flowers grow. Line 2, Huguenot girl, Huguenote meisie, refers to the story I told you in one of the previous slides about the French Huguenots that came in the 1680s, 1688 to 1689, and they were the original settlers in that area. Maybe her family was part of that original settlers as well. Please do not get confused between Drakensberg and Drakensberge. It's two different things. Drakensberge is somewhere in KwaZulu-Natal, and Drakensberg is a district in the Cape Winelands. Look at your alliteration, the H's in line 1 and the assonants in line 2. It's very rhythmic. You can almost see it, a 4 and a 2 there. It's because when I read this first stanza as well, I think you probably heard that this has a very rhythmic reading to it. It's because of the rhyme being a pair rhyme, and because of your alliteration and your assonants as well. Also enjambment that supports this beautiful sound richness and rhythm of this poem. In line 3, we speak about the light in her eyes. It's because she had such beautiful eyes. I'm going to skip here a little bit and go to betower. Betower means to bewitch. She had a power over the men. She bewitched the men. And that is why she was called La Belle Enchantresse, which is the French for beautiful enchantress. But look at that word, jonkmans. Jonkmans isn't how we speak in Afrikaans. We say jongmans with a G. So jonkmans comes from Dutch or French origins. And then line 4, the contrasting conjunction. So even though there were a lot of men and she was so beautiful and she enchanted everybody, there was only one person, she says, but there was only one person that had the power to win her heart. Here we've got symbolism. It's not literally a heart. It is referring to love. So he won her love, and that symbolism. And then you have to remember when they ask you, it's figurative language. Then your pair rhyme. I love it how it's pair rhyme because we're talking about two people in love. It's a couple, it's pair, you know, pair rhyme just works beautifully. And also pair rhyme is very sound rich as well. And then you look at your enjambment from 1 to 2, 3 to 4, and that also hastens the tempo, and it binds 1 and 2 together and binds 3 and 4 together, so it makes it for a very good rhythm. Elise, o Elise met die lieflike oë, jou hart sou jy gee vir die rooi orgidee. Elise, o Elise, jy het jou liefde beloof aan hom wat die blom van die berghang sou bring. Elise, o Elise, with the beautiful eyes, you would give your heart for the red orchid. Elise, o Elise, with you promised your love to him who would bring you the flower from the mountainside. We've got Elise, o Elise, which is repetition. It emphasizes how beautiful she was. We've got lieflike oë in line 5 as well. It's also the repetition you'll see in a later line. We have that line again. It tells you that her eyes were so enchanting. She had beautiful eyes. It's the second time that we say this about her eyes. She had light in her eyes in the previous slide, so she must have had some extraordinary eyes. Line 6, we've got symbolism here again. She didn't literally take out her heart all pumping and give it to somebody. No, it is referring to her love. There were some conditions. She says her heart she would have given for the red orchid. So that's the condition. If you bring the red orchid, she would give you her heart, her love. She would marry the person who bring her the red orchid. The red orchid is symbolism for whoever the person is that would bring it. It's also synecdoche, which means we are speaking about the flower, which is a part, when we are actually referring to a whole, which is the person behind the flower. Then we have yait in line 7, which is jy het, it's Elise. And line 7, we've got the word beloof, which means promised. So she promised her love. She promised to marry the person who would bring the flower. Line 8, you've got alliteration of the B, you've got assonance of the O, and all these things emphasizes the sound richness again. And then line 8, look at that word, so. That is past tense. You get it in line 6 as well. Jou hart sou jy gee. That so is past tense because it shows what was supposed to have happened. So the past tense tells you that something went wrong. So you actually see it ahead of time that something is going to go wrong. Binnerym is different from end rhyme. So end rhyme is when you've got that paar rhyme in the previous slide where the last words basically rhyme with each other. Well, binnerym is when you have a sentence and inside the sentence 2 words rhyme. Now it can be any words, anywhere, but it helps with the rhythm as well. Now this section here is a refrain. Refrain is a chorus because this is a ballad and a tragic ballad at that, and called a lyrical ballad. It is supposed to be very rich in sound and strong rhythm, and that is why we add the chorus. So the chorus helps with that rhythm and that repetition and making, bringing the message home. Toe hy opklim teen die kraanse na die rooi orgidee, het sy lankal besluit om haar liefde te gee, maar sy voet het gegly en onder op rotse met 'n diesa in sy hand is sy liggaam gekry. When he climbed up the cliffs to the red orchid, she had already decided to give him her love, but his foot slipped and below on rocks with a diesa in his hand, his dead body was found. So that's your flower and your diesa in its natural habitat, growing nicely there between the rocks, deadly rocks. So when he decided to climb up the cliffs, he is now, I'm just adding this, you don't need to know this Flip Durant, but knowing the story from many years ago, I know his name was Flip. But you don't need to know that for your exams, it's just an FYI. So he is the man that she was in love with. He was so desperate and so in love with her, and he wanted to show his affection and show her that he was worthy of her. He wanted to prove himself to her. So he climbed the cliffs, and while he was climbing these cliffs, in line 10 it says that she already decided, even while he was climbing, long before he was climbing, she decided that she was going to give her love to him. She was going to marry him. Now, line 10 basically shows you that how tragic this entire story is, because if they just communicated, if she just said, hey Flippy, I love you, I want to marry you, we can do, skip this whole quest thing. That was just to deter the other idiots who are throwing themselves at me. If there was communication, they could have saved this couple's love story. But unfortunately, she was too proud, and she, didn't want to stoop and, show him how much she loved him. So she just made him go ahead with this quest, and we know how that ended. Line 11, I'm jumping, sorry. We've got pair rhyme here again, so we've got orchidea, and here is the pair rhyme. Then in line 11, we've got maar, which is a contrasting conjunction. So unfortunately, while he was climbing and she already decided to give her love to him, unfortunately, his foot slipped. His foot slipped, and we know that he fell to his death. In line 12, the word liggaam means body, and this refers to a dead body, was found with the Disa in his hand. Now this is ironic, ladies and gents, because he actually picked the Disa, which means he was the person that was going to marry her if this quest was anything to go on. So he in fact did get it. He is the one. He was going to be the one that married her. But now, he's dead. Ironic. Binneruim, gekry en gegly. Also adds to the sound richness of your poem. As nevels in die maanlig om die rotswande vou, staan daar bo die afgrond 'n eensame vrou. En saam met winde wat huil deur die klowe, roep sy na hom, want haar hart was belowe. When mist wraps around the precipice in the moonlight, there stands a lonely woman above the cliff, and with the winds that howl through the ravine, she calls to him because she had promised her heart. Now, nevels, there's enjambment, from line 13 to 16. There's quite a lot of enjambment in this poem, and remember, this adds to the tempo of the poem, and it links the whole poem together, gives it all that nice sound-rich, rhythm-y thingies that we were talking about, how poetry is so tra-la-la. So, nevels is mist clouds. Beautiful word for miswolke, mist clouds. So obviously, all ghost stories has to happen at night. It has to be a moonlit night. And now the story goes that on a moonlit night, when you have mist clouds around the cliffs, then you see this lonely woman who stands at the top of the cliff. And she is lonely because she never really loved anybody else, and she committed suicide, so she didn't marry, so she would be lonely. We've got personification in line 15. We always use the words winds that howl. In Afrikaans, we say winde wat huil. Huil is only something a person can do, and therefore, even though we always use that term, it is seen as personification. It emphasizes the sound that the wind is making when it blows around the cliffs. She calls to him. So we have the sound where she calls to him because she cannot move on. She's still looking for him. He is the one that got away. And also the guilt. Remember, she blames herself for what happened to him. And we've got a reason-giving conjunction, want. Why is she calling to him? Because her heart was promised. She was going to marry him. That is the promise. So she is bound by that promise. We've got alliteration here beautifully in this stanza from 13 to 16. All the A sounds, all the W sounds. It binds the stanza to a unit. And we've got this W that supports and emphasizes the sound of the wind blowing around the cliffs. Beautiful pair rhyme here again, just emphasizing this pair and this couple and the love story. And this is the part of your ghost story. Elise, o Elise met die lieflike oë, jou hart wou jy gee vir die rooi orchidee. Elise, o Elise with the beautiful eyes, you wanted to give your heart for the red orchid. Here we have our enjambment again, and this is our chorus. So this is again the same as line 5 and line 7, I think it was line 5, which repeats, yes, Elise, o Elise met die lieflike oë. So the chorus then just substantiates the rhythm, the sound richness. Again, we've got the past tense, wou, like we had in our line 6 and line 8, where we had so. Here we have wou. She wanted to give her heart for the red orchid. So this is now past tense, showing what she wished, what she wanted, and then that it's a lost chance. She lost it because of her pride, and she had a choice in the matter. ladies and gents. And then the red orchid here, again, the symbolism, how the red orchid is not really just the red orchid, it is what it could have been, what it stood for. It was a man who she was in love with, that she wanted to marry, she wanted to give her heart to him, and unfortunately he died holding on to that. So here's just a very bad picture of a lady jumping off a cliff that I superimposed, and this is from the original ghost story. And there's a ghost! Boo! Thanks for watching, guys. Remember, if you've got any questions, you can follow me on Instagram at Afrikaans Classroom. Please subscribe to my channel for more videos, like and share.